but you learn to sort of go with the flow, as it were. You learn to try to understand what's going to happen next and how long is it going to take. It's not going to nothing happens instantly. The key thing about the oxalic acid is the way we're doing it today is we're going to vaporize oxalic acid crystals. So we use a vaporizer, which is essentially a wand connected to a battery. We have the battery here, and then we put the crystals in this cup, and when you turn the battery on, it raises the temperature in the cup to about 400 degrees, which vaporizes the crystals. And then the crystals, then the vapor invades the entire inside of the hive, including any bees that are in there, so that it's a very when it crystallizes again, it's a very thin cover to everything in the hive, and the bees wander around on the oxalic acid, and it kills the mites. Essentially, kills the Varroa destroyer mites, which is the purpose of the exercise. So we've got the battery, we've got the wand. We have to, oxalic acid vapor is quite nasty, so you don't want to breathe it in. So I've got my mask, which is, again, I will try and avoid being in the vapor. I don't want to go anywhere near the vapor myself, but in the event that the wind blows and it blows towards me, I'm going to wear the mask to make sure that I don't ingest any vapor. The crystals we use are oxalic acid crystals, actually called wood bleach, is very commonly available at the hardware store. So easy and relatively inexpensive as well. You get a huge tub that will last multiple seasons. So I think we've had this for 5-10 years now, and I'm still using it, so very, very inexpensive. We'll also be using a timer. The timer is required because it takes about 2.5 minutes to heat up and vaporize the crystals, and we don't want to let it go for too long because the vaporizer will get too hot, and we don't want to cause any damage in the hive. Obviously the hive is full of wax, and so it's important that we don't heat the hive unnecessarily and cause the wax to melt, or certainly not to catch fire. So very important to minimize the amount of time that we use more precisely. And then once we've finished heating the crystals and the crystals are vaporized, we can then turn off the power from the battery and let the whole thing cool down. Today we won't be worrying about too much. We'll take the wand out and we'll put it in have a little tub of water to instantly cool it down, so that we can put the wand down and not worry about any issues with the heat. Before we start, I will be closing up any holes or any ventilation holes in the hive. So we just use painter's tape essentially to go over some of the holes in the hive apart from the main entrance. We keep the main entrance fully open because that's where the wand goes in, and we want to make sure that there's no, as we vaporize, there's no drafts inside the hive, so that the gas can propagate throughout the hive and cover all the surfaces as it condenses. Other than that, I'll use there's a couple of big holes in the hive, which is the bottom board, which looks like this. We have a grid on the bottom of the hive, and we put in a bottom board. This is an example of the bottom board. The value of this is that when we see the mites die, they'll drop onto the bottom board and we'll be able to see what effect the vaporization has had. But it also serves a purpose to keep the drafts from rising from underneath the hive as the wand heats up. So we want to just make sure that it's well sealed to prevent any air just rolling around the edges of the bottom board. And then finally, we'll be taking the front. We have to take the entrance reducer off, or we use in our case, in our hives we use a metal entrance reducer. So we need to put that back on when we're done, and we use a stapler just to staple it back in place. I think that's the bulk of the materials that we're going to use today, and then we'll go out to the hive, and I'll put my bee suit on. We'll go out to the hive and we'll run through that process, and then we can come back and talk about why we're doing this. So I'm going to start off by just closing up a couple of the holes, and then we'll set up the battery and the wand. As I said earlier, I'm just using painter's tape. This is to keep the bees inside. These bees, this particular hive, the bees like to come out at the top. So I'm closing this up first, hoping that they'll stay inside, even if they begin to notice that I'm working on the hive. Go around the back. There's that board that I showed you earlier underneath. I'm just going to make sure it's firmly in place so that the gas vapor doesn't come out. So the idea is to seal up the hive as much as possible, so that the gas can cover the entire inside of the hive, and then when it starts to cool down, it will cover the hive with oxalic acid. Oxalic acid, by the way, is just a natural chemical found in the hive, so it doesn't harm the bees. Now I'm going to take off the entrance reducer, which is one that we've stapled on in this case. So we'll put that back when we're done. And I'm just going to see if there's any dead bees inside that need to just come out. I don't want to set them on fire if they're dried out. It doesn't seem to be. Oh, there's a couple. Look, a couple of naturally dead bees. The female bees only live for 42 days in the summer, and so given that we've had an extended summer period, that some of them may have lived a bit longer, the queen may have been laying a bit longer. So I've got my oxalic acid crystals, and I just need a small amount that goes into the crucible on the wand, the vaporizer, and I don't want to use too much. There we go. And then I'm going to put that in the hive and block the entrance around the wand. So now it's time to heat the oxalic acid crystal. So I'm going to connect the wand to the battery charger. And I also have to set my timer, and we just wait for the countdown now. So if we watch the hive, we should see some fumes coming out, but hopefully not too many. Oh, all the crystals have gone. So the cup is empty, and I'm just going to cool it down in this
water. And you could hear how hot it was. So that's it. I'm going to leave that now for 10 minutes, 10 or 15 minutes. Then I'll open the hive up so the bees get back to having the air, and all the oxalic acid will have vapor will have condensed inside, and hopefully will kill off the varroa mites.
As beekeepers, we have to know as much about the things that affect the hive and the health of the bees as we do about the bees themselves. And one of the biggest predators, if you like, of the bees, one of the biggest issues that the bees have is called varroa destroyer mites. So these are tiny little insects that live on the bees. It's called frenetic mites, and also that delve down into the cells within the comb when there's pupa, when there's brood before the bees cap the brood. So they're very impactful. They have a very, very strong impact on the health of the hive. So it's really important that we do our best to manage and, as far as possible, mitigate the impact of these mites. The mites are the vector of many different issues that affect the hive. So they attack the pupa themselves, they attack the bees themselves, so they weaken the bees. The mites are very deleterious to the bee population. Probably the biggest impact beyond pesticides and other factors that can affect the hive. So it's important as beekeepers that we really treat the hives as much as possible to eliminate the mites. Now, what we're doing today is one part of what we call integrated management, integrated pest management. So there are many different ways that you can look at treating the mites, and it depends very much on the situation of the hive, the season, the level of infestation, etc. That will help you decide what kind of treatment that you might want to give. So in the summer or in spring, we can use formic acid strips. They go in the hive and they propagate formic acid, which is also, it doesn't harm the bees, but it kills off the mites. However, you need to be able to control the temperature, or the temperature needs to be between 45, 50 degrees up to about 85 degrees. So there's only a certain window that you can use those strips. They're very effective, but there's only a certain window of time, because the weather gets too warm or it gets too cold, or it's too cold in the mornings. You have to leave the strips on for a couple of weeks. So that's one type of treatment. The vaporization treatment is another alternative, using oxalic acid this time. And there's a couple of different ways of putting oxalic acid into the hive. One is called the dribble method, or the drop method, where you dissolve the crystals and you dribble water over the hive elements. But again, you don't want to be dribbling water in the cold months when there's a possibility that the weather will freeze, that the temperature will freeze, because moisture in the hive when it's freezing is not good for the bees. So we use this vaporization method late in the season because it doesn't require the temperature to be warm. It doesn't introduce any moisture into the hive, and it does coat the inside of the hive. And that way, it does have, it kills off the frenetic mites. It doesn't penetrate the comb, doesn't penetrate, the capping on the comb. So it has to be done after the queen stopped laying, after the brood has developed into bees. So there's no brood in the hive at this point. It wouldn't be very effective to use vaporization earlier in the season, because again it doesn't penetrate the comb, and therefore any mites that are growing inside the comb in the pupa of the bees would still develop, and you wouldn't kill them off. So what we're going to do today is first of all close up the gaps in the hive. We're going to basically vaporize some oxalic acid crystals in a specialized vaporizer, which is a wand with a cup at the end and connected to essentially a battery charger in this case, that gives it a 12-volt charge. The battery will cause the cup in the wand to heat to 400 degrees, and the crystals that we put inside the cup of the wand will then vaporize inside the hive. It will cover all the surfaces inside the hive, and then once we turn it off, that vapor will crystallize again, leaving a very thin layer of oxalic acid within the hive that and on any bees that are in there, which will hopefully be most of the bees in the hive. So they'll be covered in the oxalic acid. Again, it's not detrimental to them if they're in good health, but it will kill any frenetic mites that are on them. So we should see that in the following days. We'll see a big mite drop on the bottom board of the hive when we take it out to look at it later on, probably tomorrow.
So what we're looking at is the bottom board from yesterday's treatment, and what we're looking to see is how many mites are there. Both of these were treated. There's a much larger mite drop here than there is here, but that could also be because we didn't clean that board off. But if you look closely right here, you're going to see there's one right there. There's one right there. There's one. So there's a little cluster right here, which also tells us that that's where the brood is. So there are frames from here over and from here over, and the cluster, all the bees are clustered likely right here. Now on this one, this is a much larger mite drop. So there are more mites here, and you can see them. Here's where the bees are, and this is what they're chewing the wax. These are wax cappings, and there's a cluster over here, a cluster over here, a cluster over here. So this hive likely had more mites than this hive.